Hello everyone, it is time for a live stream and we're doing it early today. Big surprise. I want to thank my sponsor Rogers Reef Food for supporting this channel. I want to remind you that Coral Magazine is the issue that, or the subscription that you should have. If you're not a subscriber now, you need to be one. And also I offer consultation services. We're doing a really fast live stream, so I'm zipping through all these things right now. So this is my birthday week, and I'm starting a live stream early because I have to go to the airport in about an hour to get my best friend who flew here from Hawaii. And I thought the flight kept getting delayed because of ice there, and I was like, all right, well, how am I going to do this? Do I start this show like 2 hours later than usual? I thought, let me just do a quickie. So the topic today is going to be about RODI membranes specifically, because I had an incident occur just before my trip, before I left town to go see my parents, and I want to discuss this with you because the membrane itself that is in your RO system. Oh man, I should have brought some scissors over here. I don't think I have anything sharp. I have to use my teeth on this thing. All right, let's see. Okay, I just want to remove this. Sorry for all the crinkling on the audio. So here is 100-gallon-a-day membrane. These are the membranes I sell. These are the ones that go in my RODI systems for the last 20 years. I've been selling these probably since 2003, 2004 through my website. And this one here has a black, let's call it a gasket. I don't know what else to call it. But it's a seal that works when it goes inside the housing. And then you've got a couple of O-rings here at the end. It's very, very important when you're installing the membrane in the housing that you put this end in first, okay? So, now, why am I talking about membranes? Well, something happened to me this week that's never happened to me before. I've heard of it, I've warned people about it happening, but I've never experienced it until this week. Every time I turn on my RODI system, I purge the first 90 seconds of water. So I'm going to show you what my system looks like. That's mine. I've been using the same one. It's very simple. 3 filters on the bottom, which are called the pre-filters. And then on top is the booster pump and the membrane. And then in the foreground there is the DI. That's it. It's a 5-stage system. And I've seen people out there that have systems that are double or triple membranes. They have 3 DIs. They have 6 pre-filters. So let me look. I know everyone's trying to do the best they can to make pure water. But realistically, a lot of that you don't need, okay? And that's why I don't offer it or sell it. I sell a simple system that does the job, and I use a simple system that does the job. Now, you may be in a situation where your water is such an issue, it requires you to add all these extra stages, but realistically, you need a sediment filter, which is this guy right here. It's filter floss material, and here, I'll unwrap it so nothing's so shiny on camera. Here is the sediment. Ta-da! Simple. I mean, there's no moving parts, okay? Then you have 2 carbon filters. Now this is called a carbon block filter because it's a solid block of carbon, even though there's a hole through the center. And it's got a mesh over the top to keep any carbon dust from getting into your system. And you're going to use 2 of them. And then the membrane itself, which you saw. And then finally, you've got your DI. The DI has a rubber gasket at the top. And then it's got this screw-on cap at the bottom. This is the type I sell. There's actually an arrow on both sides that says this and up. So make sure that you install it this way. If you install it this way, you're not going to get any water. Literally no water will come out of your system. You're like, what's wrong? Why is it broken? I turned on the water. Nothing's happening. Right side up, okay? That way when the water flows down the housing, it goes up through the center, works its way through the media, comes out the top, and comes out of your system, okay? That's it. And that way we don't have a super complex system. Now, the reason people say, well, I need more filters before the membrane, it's because they see numbers on their TDS meter, and then they say, well, I added all these extra filters, now it's working better. And I don't know that that's true. This is the thing that removes TDS, okay? This, just this. I'm going to switch cameras again because you've seen my system now long enough. This membrane the water flows through this membrane. And the membrane is, if you look closely enough, you can see it's just a layer upon layer upon layer of the membrane material. It's just a fabric. And they roll it up super tight. And then the water has to go through whatever is in there. And to be honest, I've never peeled one apart in my life. I use one until it's dead. And the water has to get through it, through this, and come out the other end, to then come to the next part of your system. If you see your TDS going up, it's the membrane. It's never the pre-filters. The pre-filters are there to protect your system from sediment getting into it, to clog up the membrane, and to protect it from chlorine, fluoride, stuff like that, okay? It'll absorb metals as well. So, that's why you have pre-filters, to protect this thing that removes almost all the TDS. And then whatever little bit of TDS comes out the other end, this polishes it clean, okay? So, let me tell you what happened to me. And I posted about it on Facebook, so you might have seen it, or on Instagram. When you install a membrane in your system and you turn it on, your TDS initially will turn on rather rapidly. I brought a TDS meter to show you because I have a nice large one that I sell on my website. Jackie, are you finding a good spot? I had to pick her up from boarding today. She's a little bit all over the place. So here's the meter that I use. There it is. 0 TDS. Perfect. Okay. So I turn on the water, and then I turn on the meter, and I watch the number, and it goes really high. 100, 200, something like that. But it comes down really fast too, and comes all the way back down to nearly 0. Usually it's around 4, 3, or 2. Okay, once it hits 2, and even better if it hits 1, then I'm super happy, because then I'll open the DI fitting, the valve that lets water come out of the DI. I want to waste that initial TDS, that first comes out during the first minute. It's called TDS creep, and I'm avoiding it. So anyway, I do this every single time. I've been doing this for 20 years on my own system, and I only have to replace my DI cartridge every 4, 5, 6 months. Maybe sometimes it goes longer. It really depends on the city water. But I'm expecting a nice low number, and then then I can start making DI water. I will close the RO line. And let me show this to you one more time. So there's my system. You'll see, like I said, the DI is in the foreground there on the right. And then there's a blue horizontal tube that is going across and off camera, okay? On the end of that's a valve. That is my purge valve that I open up into a small glass beaker that I just stick next to the unit. I put the little valve in there, the cutoff valve. I open it, and I let it run. And I set a timer on my watch that says, to make an alarm in 90 seconds. Because trust me, every single time I turn it on, I go do things. I don't just stand there and wait 90 seconds, and then my wrist starts vibrating, and I run over there and close the valve, and I open up the DI valve, and I make DI water. This has worked really well. Usually you waste about 4 ounces of water. Anyway, so I keep saying I'm going to say what happened. I'm at that point. I just had to lead you up into the story. At this point, I turn on the system, and today it says 6. And I thought, well, that's weird. It's usually about 2 or 3. So I let it run for another 90 seconds, set the timer again, because I don't like a flood, and came back, and it said 12. And I was like, 12? It's going up? That's weird. So my DI cartridge was all orange. It wasn't like this. And this is how they look when you buy them, but then when you get them wet, they turn dark blue or black. And then over time, the bottom will become orange, and the orange will rise and rise and rise. And it's just a visual indicator. It does not tell you how much TDS you're getting. It does not tell you much of anything other than you're consuming the resin. So my resin's orange to the top, but it's coming out 0. I'm thinking, all right, whatever. But now my meter is saying that my TDS coming out of the RO system, out of the membrane, is coming out at 12. And I thought, well, maybe the sensor on the meter, after all these years, is failing. It's just not telling me the truth. So I thought, let's just open the DI, let it run. And then about 15, 20 minutes later, I walked into the utility room, and I checked on the RO system again, and the TDS coming out of the membrane was 66. And I was like, oh, because normally it's 2. And then I looked at the DI, and I quickly switched the buttons because there's 2 buttons on that meter, and I switched from RO water to DI water, and it said it was coming out at 6. So even, my DI, like I said, it was orange. It was basically toast, but it was still producing 0 TDS. But now that's coming in at 66. It's coming out at 6. I turned everything off, and I went ahead and I took it all apart. So what I'm describing to you is when a membrane fails, it can do a couple of things. Number one, no more water comes out. It's clogged up, and you get no more what's called product water, or the good water, the RO water. You just get nothing. The other thing that can and what's happening is all the water's going down the drain, just so you know. When nothing comes out of that, then it's all going down the waistline, and that's the end of it. The other thing that can happen, but has never happened to me until this week, was that TDS would rise rapidly because the membrane has failed, and you just have to replace it. Now, normally, well, okay, let me rephrase that. In the past, in the early 2000s, I could tell people that a membrane was good for 1 to 5 years, and it just depended where you lived. But in my situation, I could go 6 or 7 years with a membrane. And then what happened when the membrane finally was toast, it would telescope. You know how a pirate would do this, and then he'd slide the tube and it would become longer? There is a word for that thing, spyglass. And when it telescopes, you see like this, do. That's what a membrane will do. It will do, there's 2 things that can happen. The membrane can kind of become concave on this side and convex on this side. It just telescopes. And that means it's pulling itself apart because it's trying to let water go through, and it's essentially done. The other thing, and which has happened to me, was that this rubber ring slid all the way down the body to down here. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. When I peeled it out, I was like, wow, I've never seen that before. Okay, but this membrane that I had in my system this time, I installed it at some point. I think it was April of 2023. And actually, I have a picture, which I don't have ready for you. But it's on my Facebook and Instagram if you guys want. Well, let me grab it for you. It's right here. We'll just throw it on screen here. Mac Mini. Where are you? Here we go. So there it shows the membrane was changed February 8th, 2023. The filters were changed last August. And I decided at that point, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to just put in a new filter and call it a day. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink that down just a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and just replace this part and all the fittings because I don't want to have a failure point. I mean, I've had the same thing on the same membrane housing on top of my RO system for, I don't know, 10 years, a decade, and, everything fails over time. These little fittings, these John Guest fittings, they become brittle in time. They can snap, they can fail, they can squirt water everywhere. I mean, it's just, you're working with water. Any fitting on plumbing can potentially fail. So when you have something older, rather than take a chance and keep using that brittle item, I'd much rather spend a little bit of money, get some replacement parts that are new, and that way I could turn it on with faith or no fear that something's going to go wrong, especially when I was about to leave town the next day. And by the way, when I leave town, I have a cutoff valve on the front of my RO system, which is easy for me to reach instead of trying to get to the cold water line, which is behind the washing machine. I just close that valve, and no more water can go into the RO system. So if for some reason something wanted to burst, it would have to burst between the wall and the cutoff valve. But it wouldn't be the RODI system that flooded my house. It would be the tubing before it. I mean, Murphy's Law, something's going to go wrong no matter what. So I installed my brand new membrane, and I thought, you know what? Let me replace all the filters. And what else? I replaced everything except the bracket and the housings themselves and the booster pump and the auto shutoff valve and stuff like that. This right here is the auto shutoff valve. And so anyway, I wanted to discuss that with you and let you know. Actually, I brought everything here to actually build a system while we're talking on the show today to kind of just give you a little bit of some insights on maintenance of your RO system. So I think I brought everything and forgot nothing. Now, I've got some rules here. I'm going to move this camera around a little bit to make it easier for you to see. I'm going to show you a couple things I do here. So let's move this guy. We don't need the keyboard, but we do need the camera to play nice. So let me do this. And then let's move this down. You can see the tank hasn't even lit up behind me. So now if I'm working here, you can see. Okay, so I am holding the tape in my left hand. I'm holding the fitting in my right hand. This is how I always wrap PVC fittings, even when you're doing plumbing for an aquarium, okay? And you hold it where the threads are, well, obviously accessible. You couldn't flip this piece and still do what I'm trying to do, okay? So I hold it in my right hand, I tip the tape in my left hand, I put it on the front of the fitting, and then I wrap it around there, and I wrap it around quite a few times. Now, the reason I'm explaining this right hand, left hand thing is because the way I'm wrapping it, I'm wrapping with the threads, and that way when I screw it into something, it doesn't peel it off as you put it in. If you put the tape on your fitting backwards or on a PVC fitting that's going to your aquarium, like some kind of I'm trying to think of the word. Sometimes you just have a female pipe thread that has a screw into a male pipe fitting, and you've got to put the tape on the correct direction. So that's it. And when I put the tape on there, it kind of makes a volcano shape. That's intentional because I need it to start, and then as it goes in, it gets thicker and thicker and seals the fitting. So the RO system uses a couple of those. So I'm just keep wrapping here for the next 5 minutes. I'm going to look at your comments. Maybe I can answer some questions because this is kind of a slow motion thing. You can't build an RO system super fast. But basically the ones that I sell on my website, and I did put a link in case you guys wanted one. I've always joked that none of my friends have my RODI system. That's because they already have one. But if you're needing one, I sell them on my website. I sell replacement filters. I sell parts. I sell the wrench to tighten things up. I sell the TDS meters. I sell everything RODI related that I use myself. And so let me look at these things. Oh, thank you, Andrea. She put the link up for getting the Coral Magazine subscription if you're so inclined. Okay, the next fitting that goes on my RO system is this one. And actually, it's a bridge. And it's going to go between two housings. Now, I know the white light is really blinding it out, but it's going to go right there into those two. And it becomes one. Now, this is actually a good one to know because there's an O-ring as well. Got to make sure that you have this. Make sure it's been greased appropriately with some silicone grease. And then it fits inside this housing. It usually fits inside this housing. Wow. Here we go. So there it is. You want to make sure that's in there. If you have an older system, that O-ring could become flattened from time. Sometimes you can, to get a little bit more time, you can take it out and flip it over and put it back in to put the rounded side up. But that just gets you by for a few more months. Okay, so sometimes the fitting between here and the next one will break right there. And unfortunately, you've got to take the entire system apart to get to that one fitting. I mean, literally, this is the starting point of building an RO system, is putting the three white caps together. At least, on mine. There are other brands where they have the fittings going front to back, front to back, front to back, and they kind of weave the tubing in around like that. But mine goes straight through to the next one, to the next, to the next. All right, let's see if there's a question. Oh, Triggerfish says I should have waited and had my friend on the show. To be honest, her own words would be, I would be worthless because she hasn't slept and she left last night at 8 o'clock at night from Hawaii, from Maui, or maybe from Oahu actually to get here. I don't even know. So this is a very, very, very important fitting, and in the early days when I was starting to build these myself, I had to take them apart completely because I'd see a drip. I'm like, are you kidding me? And it was not fun. But here we go. So I've been best friends with Jesse since something like 2006, I believe. So here is that piece with tape on both sides. Gonna do another one, which I'm hiding right here. All right, let's see what else. The Golf Life says Dow Chemical makes great RO filters. Well, thank you for telling me. I have been selling the same filters from the same company this entire time, basically because I'm loyal. I'm loyal to my supplier. You know, they've taken really good care of me over the years. They've dealt with whatever was coming up. If I had an issue, if I was doing a trade show and needed to provide water for all the booths, which I did for a couple of years, they would come out with a really big system. It turns out they are the same company that made the water filtration system for live aquaria. And I saw this giant thing. I mean, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I sent them a picture and said, check out this system. And they said, that's ours. And I was like, shouldn't we use it as a marketing tool to get me more sales? And he just kind of laughed, you know. So anyway, I've had lots of Chinese companies over the years and say, hey, we can beat your prices and get you these much cheaper than you're paying now, or I can get you cheaper carbons, or we can give you our amazing DI resin. And I'm like, I'm sticking with the company that's been my supplier the whole time. Everything I sell works. Everything goes into the systems. There is a good part, though. If you were in a situation where, for some reason, you needed to buy some RODI filters for my system locally, you know, you just had to go to the fish store and get some, or you need to rush them from Amazon instead of waiting for me. They're industry filters. They're not proprietary, which means that you can actually just, I didn't bring any tools. Okay, I'm going to have to run away from the camera for a minute. But the filters, 10-inch filters, that's it. Okay, so here's our first one that's kind of ready without a tool. To get that. I should have remembered those. I thought I grabbed everything, but I am incorrect. What I'll do when I walk away, I will stick my video of the reef tank up on the screen so you can look at that while I dash. So now we've got the oh, by the way, these caps, if you look very closely, they say in and they say out. That's also very important. If you ever have to rebuild your system and you're doing maintenance on it, if you put them backwards, you're literally going to make things go wrong. You have to make sure that the water's coming into the system, goes down into this housing, goes up through the center, back up, and then out to the next and the next and the next. It has to be that way on all stages. Okay, I'm going to switch that video and go fetch some tools. Well, I don't need to be on here. Can I do something with that? Maybe I can shrink it. That way you can see Spock better. Be right back. Hey, Jackie. I got it back. Grab some handy things. So, switch our camera back. By the way, if you're looking for RO systems on my website, that's not it. Here we go. I think that'll work. Yeah. So you've got here the 3 systems I offer. And I have the large one, which is the 150 gallon a day system. I've got the 100 gallon a day, and I even offer a freshwater system because occasionally someone freshwater wants one. So you just go to shop.mullersreef.com, and then you can go to the top, and you'll see at the very top of the screen here, it says reverse osmosis. You click there, and you've got accessories, filters, membranes, parts, plumbing connections, and systems. I sell pretty much anything you need to get operational. And now I hear myself being all breathless from running back and forth. All right, let's see. So I'm going to use a wrench here to tighten this up. Whenever you're putting plastic into plastic, you just need to make it snug. You definitely do not want to over tighten it or just tighten it down to the end of the threads. We want to get a good seal without doing any damage to the threads or the system itself. That way you don't have to keep buying more parts. And also, you don't end up cracking something. Don't want to do that. So we've got the first one that we made. We're going to connect it to the second one. Now I can just hand twist it because I have a nice big thing to hold on to and I don't need a wrench. And I'm doing this until it feels firm. I'm not trying to get it to like, 10 twists or whatever. I just need it to be where it's together. Okay. Then we'll get our next housing. I know I forgot one more thing. Dang it. I forgot the screws. I'm going to have to run out there again one more time to finish this project with you guys. Okay, so we'll put the third one on. Oops. Got to make sure you put it on correctly though, okay? Don't crisscross your threads. I can't believe I forgot those screws. I thought of them when I was grabbing things and bringing them into here. Okay, so here's our three. But see, I need those screws like pretty much next. It's like great. All right. So I will run away and let you guys look at the reef one more time. Now we put our elbows on the end because now we've got water going in, out, in, out, all the way across. Everything's correct. If any of these were backwards, I'd have to disassemble and fix it. So these fittings, I put them in as far as I can with my hand, and then I grab a little tiny screwdriver. I put it in there for some leverage. Maybe it's not so loud for you guys. And this one has to go a certain orientation for the tubing to work correctly for me. And now we have the section ready for the pre-filters. Let me go get the screws. I'll be right back. Which video was it? I think it was this one? Yeah. All right. Be right back. You want to come outside, Jack? Come on, Jack. What were you barking at? Okie dokie. Now we're gonna probably move this camera again for you to make it better, so you can see what I'm doing next. Because I need some. Nope, that's not it. This one right here. I want to do it over here. So let's see what we can do with this camera. So you can kind of see the action. That looks pretty good, I think. Maybe I should turn the light in the room so you can see better. Okay, so next I have to put this bracket onto my assembly. It's going to sit on top like this. I'm going to keep this near me. I don't want it to block your view. I'm going to have to move that, I see that. But I want it kind of in front of me when I'm talking. Let's see if this wire is long enough to go down here. Nope, it's not. All right, whatever. It was better where it was, huh? I'm gonna leave it right here. That way you can see what's happening. So now the way this thing holds on, I use those 2 screws I just fetched that I've lost track of. Here they are. And they go through the membrane mount into the cap. Right there. And right here. And I also don't want to strip these, so I use the clutch on my drill to stop when it's seated. Make sure this bracket's nice and straight, yeah. Okay. And then I put in another 8 screws. I'll just mute this so it doesn't make it weird. Part is all done, and all it needs is a sticker on the front. Let me move this around again. So the next part is putting the membrane in the housing. I keep seeing dog hairs. I guess I need to clean in here a little bit better. All right, so when you're installing this, you're getting a brand new one. These are typically not greased because they don't want grease in the packaging. So you buy yourself some silicone grease. This comes from Home Depot, Lowe's, and there's different kinds. Will it focus? Will it focus? It will not. Anyway, you can see it. And this stuff is clear, it's food grade, it's safe. You can use it on all the O-rings on your aquarium, on your pumps, on your unions. And I highly recommend it on your unions. If you're putting anything together with a union on your system, yes, the O-ring inside the union, but then the part that threads that you tighten the nut around, put it all over those threads of the union. So that way one day when you need to take that union apart, you can. So I'm just going to apply the silicone grease here. And then a little secret thing you probably did not know you could do. You also take whatever's remaining on your finger and you rub it on the inside here, and that will help this slide in. Now remember I told you the 2 rings at the end, they go in to the bottom here, and we are going to push it all the way down. Sometimes these housings can fail, and they'll develop tiny cracks in the very end here, and water's bypassing and you're having problems. So sometimes fixing an RO system is just getting a new one of these guys. Okay, so you push it in all the way down. That's it. That's as far as it goes in. You don't need to hammer it. Just pops right in. And if you're having a hard time, maybe a little bit more silicone grease on the inside of the PVC housing. Okay, then this housing needs 3 more fittings. Okay, let me see if I can find another question. Glenn says, do they fit the BRS 7-stage? Yes. Everything I sell is industry standard, which means it will. Funny story for you that few people know, and I don't care if I tell people at this point, but a long time ago, my supplier said, hey, I just want to let you know we sent a pallet of RODI systems to BRS. And I said, why? And they said, well, you know, they asked for them. And I said, you shouldn't have done that. And they were like, well, if it helps, we charge them more than we charged you. I was like, no, it doesn't help. And interestingly, it was the only pallet they shipped to BRS ever. They never made another transaction. Well, I've been loyal for 20 years. Now, the reason, oh, by the way, I want to tell you, this right here is a very specific fitting. This is a elbow fitting with a check valve built in. And that check valve goes in this hole right here, not this one. This is your waistline. This is your product line. The waistline is off center. This one here is in the middle of the, I'm trying to do it where you can see. This is in the middle. You can kind of see right there. This is the side, that's the waste, always. So if you're taking it apart and you can't remember how it all went together, waste goes on the outside. This one here is your good line coming out. This is going to be your city water going in, okay? Goes in here, waste comes out the waste, and product comes out the product. So anyway, I know what BRS did. They got their pallet of stuff, they took them apart, and they basically figured out how they work, how they were built, the pieces they needed, and they ordered themselves, a freight load of everything, and started having people build them in-house, and became my direct competition. And I was like, So that's why, of course, I didn't want my supplier to sell them any of my RO systems, because I was like, why? Why would you do that? I mean, the other choice would have been, of course, for them to order a pallet from SpectraPure or some other company. Doesn't matter. They were still going to sell systems. And then another funny little tidbit. Probably 5 or 6 years ago, I finally forced myself to make a bunch of videos about RODI systems, which are on this channel. If you go to my channel and then go to the playlists, I have probably 7 videos, maybe more, of anything related to RODI. And they're very, very step-by-step, close-up pictures and everything, a lot better than what I'm doing right now, to where you could see what I'm doing and see how it works, and I explain every bit of this stuff. Today we're just talking about maintenance and rebuilding. So anyway, I uploaded all these videos that I spent all this time editing and getting it right, and some guy got really mad on my YouTube channel, and he just said, "This guy is ripping off BRS. If you want to go to a company you can trust, it's BRS. He's probably getting their units, peeling their label off and putting his own on there. He's a shill." And I was like, wow, if anything, it's the exact opposite, but whatever. So anyway, he and I exchanged quite a few messages over and over, for the next 24 to 48 hours. And I pointed him to my website and showed him my instruction web pages for installation, not videos. I said, I finally made these videos so you wouldn't have to read how to do this. You could watch. And finally, he's like, you know what? I think you're actually legit. You can delete all my comments. And I was like, no, you can delete your comments. I'm just answering your concerns that I'm here trying to rip off the poor hobbyists and trick them into buying my relabeled stuff. Nothing's relabeled. I literally put the label on it, if I could find it. It's here somewhere. Oh, here's my label. So that was pretty crazy. All right, let's see what else we got here. Vroomy says, how are you doing? Hope you're doing well. Hope all your friends in the chat are doing well as well. That's very nice. Trav says that he's just got an order of DI resin today. Excellent. Oh, speaking of resin, if your DI is not kept sealed in a bag to protect it from air, from oxygen, the resin will no longer stay moist. It'll dry out. It'll sound like sand, and it's worthless. So if you got something like this, like a naked one, you could probably wrap it inside saran wrap to seal it completely, or you could put it in like a bag, like you get fish, like we get from the fish store, and you can seal it in that, suck out as much air as possible. You could probably put it in a, maybe if you could find a large enough one, a Ziploc bag, and again, press out all the air and seal it. But you just want to make sure that your DI stays moist. Do not let the resin dry out. That's very important. Okay, so this one's ready. And then this O-ring here, you can also grease it with a silicone grease. Just peel it off. Put a little stuff on there. Swipe it around. This one's already been done. I'm just explaining. I mean, these are the things you want to check when you're working on your system. Just make sure everything's in good condition. It's not cracked and brittle. It's not about to snap in half and just break. You just hand tighten this. You don't need any tools. And also, if you have one of these that's been closed for years and you have to open it for the first time, you're going to need something called, well, you're going to need two somethings called a strap wrench. And you put one around here and you put one around here, And it's a rubber band type thing and a rubber band like thing, and that will let you unscrew it. It's super hard to do when it's been closed for a long time. The strap wrench, well, I keep saying one. It's two. You have to have one for here and one for here. You can try like giant channel locks, and what happens is you chew up all this plastic, and it's all gouged because it's metal on plastic. So the strap wrench is the best way to do this without any damage to your system. And that way you can go ahead and assemble it properly. Okay, so now I'm looking at this to see how it looks, and I can see that this fitting needs to go further all the way to match the back. On my system, it goes like this. Then, move the microphone, bring the camera down. This thing right here, our bracket, has the membrane holding clips. I'm just going to snap this down, and now the membrane is installed. Okay. The next step is going to be our waistline. So this is the waist tubing, and we need a inline flow restrictor, and that is going to go right here. So, I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out. Everyone look at my stomach, please. Make me hyper aware of how fat I am. I'm going to cut this piece of tubing right here with a tubing cutter. Super convenient. I am going to remove these little blue retaining clips right here and push my tubing in. And then this side over here as well. I'm going to push this one in. Then when you pull slightly, you can, if you don't drop them, you can put the little blue clip back in place. The retaining clips are not mandatory, but they sure are nice, because what they do is they avoid a hose popping out. And I do sell the clips on my website as well if you don't have any on your system. Now, I want to show you, when you're looking at this, there's an arrow. I'm trying to figure out where the camera is. See the arrow? It's pointing to this side. This is the water coming out of the RO system, and it's going this way to the drain. You want to make sure that points to the drain. Okay? If you put it the other way, it's not going to be able to do its job. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my little clip here. Now my waistline is done. The next part is the auto shut-off valve. I'm going to change this camera up a little bit higher first for a second. Back and forth, back and forth. This little guy right here is called the ASOV, auto shut-off valve. This thing has an in, it says right there, and an out right there. Super important, very much matters. It also has a back and a front. Where the screws are, it all matters. You can't just grab one and stick it on. You got to put it on exactly right or it doesn't work, okay? The water is going to, from the pre-filters, the water went through the sediment, through the carbon, and it goes into the in of the ASOV and comes out to go to the membrane. And then it comes out of the membrane and goes in to the ASOV and comes out to go to the DI. But the part that matters is that front or back. So the fact that there's screws on here gives you a clue. Now, if you haven't touched your system yet and you're about to replace one of these, take a picture with your phone. Get that photograph. Make sure you see it. That way you can look at the photo and make sure you're putting the next one on correctly so that they match. Or take off one tube at a time and move the tube from the old one to this one, then the second tube from the old one to this one, and then obviously the other two, and that way you get the 4 tubings. But just as a hint, the water will go through the back, which is the part with no screws. And then the good water coming out of the membrane goes through the front where the screws are. So in my situation here, I'm going to put my auto shut. Now the camera's wrong again. I'm going to put my auto shut-off valve where the screws are facing the front, and I'm going to have the water come from the pre-filter into here. Let's see if I can do this a little bit better. Maybe it's going to come from this fitting down here and go straight to here, and then it's going to come out from the back there and go into the housing. Everything's in the way. God. I'm just afraid I'm moving the microphone too far away and it's affecting audio. All right, so now we need a piece of blue tubing. I need to make sure I got the right one because I have 2 pieces here. And I have a piece of red tubing too. We'll save the red for last. Yeah, so this is my 4-footer piece and the other one is 6. My systems come with all 6-foot tubing. My piece here is going to go from here to here with an auto shutoff valve. So I'm going to cut my tube, and I'm going to put it on the back side. No, I'm sorry, on the front side. And that's going to go right into the membrane. And then I've got my red piece of tubing that goes from the pre-filter final stage, which is the carbon, to the auto shutoff valve. And the reason I'm showing you all this, I'm not just showing you how to build a system, I'm showing you how to fix a system that exists just as well, because sometimes that's exactly what we have to do. All right, and now we have the top system built. I'm going to put on all those little blue clips because I like them everywhere. Like I said, these are called blue retaining clips. The company that I buy all these pieces from, they used to build the systems for me. But then BRS grabbed the market. And so I sold less, and they built less. And unfortunately, the guys they were only building my systems for reef keepers. Everything else they make is for water filtration for homes, for drinking water. And so since they were only making mine occasionally, they were forgetting how to do it. And that ended up in mistakes. And that was really irritating me because I was like, man, you have one job. And they said, Mark, we used to build 16 at a time. There was no mistakes. I was like, yeah, I know. So finally at one point I was like, just stop building them. Send me all the parts. I'll build them because I'm the one that answers the tech support questions anyway. And if I don't, if I'm assuming they got it a certain way. Like, for example, I had a friend in California, and he is not mechanically inclined whatsoever. He literally won't do anything like turn a screwdriver, okay? And he says, Mark, I want to get an RODI system. Can I get yours? I said, of course. And he said, is it hard? I'm like, look, it will be ready. All you got to do is put 2 screws in the wall and hang it, and then you got to put 4 more screws for the DI. And I said, but you literally just put one piece of tubing into the next thing and you turn it on. There's nothing to it. And I told my supplier, make sure you pack this correctly and connect everything. And when he got the box, he says, now what do I do? And I said to him, what do you mean? And I was like, it's pretty straightforward. You take the main unit, put it on the wall, and then you put the little one next to it. And he said, there's a lot more in this box than you said. So I said, send me a picture. And he did. And for some reason, there was a system that was completely empty. There was no filters installed. The membrane wasn't installed. They were all just in the box with it. And I was actually really upset. I just said to my supplier, what is going on? And they said, oh, you didn't get our email? And I was like, no one sent me an email. He said, we've decided to no longer install the membrane. We just let the consumer do that. And I thought, of all the customers on the planet, this is the day you choose to make this new change? And I said, no. Everything should be installed. Like the picture on my website, it should be ready to go, minimal effort for the consumer. So anyway, I got them taken care of. Okay, so we've got a sediment, we've got 2 carbons. Here's our second carbon. I'm gonna move this down a little bit so you can see a little bit better. You don't need to rinse these or flush these or anything like that. You just put them in and they're ready to go. Then I take my bracket. I'm going to face it toward you. I usually face it toward myself. And I start with the middle one because I'm not mounted to a wall and I'm holding it. And I will just set this on top and I tighten it. And then because it's backwards, the sediment goes over here. Like I said, normally I see it. This is where my water's going in. So the first filter in is sediment. It catches sand, rust, things like that. And then our third housing, or our second carbon, goes right there. And then I lay this on the table, and I hand tighten the housing by just giving it a twist. That's it. No wrenches, nothing to ruin it. And then, of course, got to put my sticker on there. Now, this would not be part of your maintenance. Let's see if there's another question. Thank you for the birthday wish. I saw someone said that. Yes, it was my birthday. I'm actually having a birthday week. So my birthday was 2 days ago, on the 23rd. And I spent it with my parents. And then I flew home and got home late last night. And then this morning, I got up and I got Jack from her boarding place. Beautiful. Now we connect the final piece of tubing, the red tubing. This is the supply line that feeds water into your RODI system. And I put a retaining clip on there as well. And that is the full system, and I don't think I forgot anything. And then what I do, since I'm not going to be using it any moment soon, it's just going to go out into the building for a potential customer. I will just put a little zip tie on here to keep the tubing nice and tidy. And if you wanted, for some kind of cable management for your tubing, you can use plastic zip ties to secure them and make them pretty. One more thing I want to tell you about these systems. All three of these filters are 5 micron. And sometimes people said, well, I want a 10 micron here, I want a 5 micron here, I want a 1 micron here, or they say I want a 5, and I want a 1, and I want a 0.5. You don't need that. 5, 5, 5. Works perfectly, never fails, never clogs, never messes up, lasts 6 months like it should. 5 micron water, anything over 5 microns is trapped, and that means anything under 5 microns travels up to the membrane for the membrane to work and remove everything bad from the water, and then it goes out and it goes to the DI stage. Where am I going? I want to put this right here above Jack. We just don't want it to fall down on my dog. All right, let's do the DI really quick. Same thing. You've got your cap, you've got your O-ring inside, DI goes in, rubber ring at the top. This needs special fittings. This one has Teflon tape on it, saves me a step. This is my in, it's a straight fitting. So it goes on the inside. And then we have an elbow coming out that will point straight down to come on the out, which leads to your barrel or bucket or whatever reservoir you're using. It could even be a long piece of tubing that goes all the way over to your aquarium. The limitation, maximum distance is 40 feet. I'm kind of doubting myself because I haven't had to say that in forever. My own system is 25 feet from my system to my fish room to where I have a big poly tank full of salt water, where I mix my salt water. And that is one continuous 25-foot piece of tube, and they went straight through the attic and down into the fish room. Again, this cap also has the in and out. They always have an in and out. That is really important. If you do these backwards, you'll end up not getting any water coming out. It won't run correctly. So if for some reason you have to disassemble, and then you're putting the bracket on top, and you make a mistake, and you see it, you know what you have to do. Flip it around and use it the other way. If for some reason you break a fitting off, you're working on it, and you're tightening something, or you're just like, I just want to get a little bit of a little tiny nudge, and it snaps off, what you'll end up having is a fitting. You'll have this piece in your hand, and inside the hole, you'll see the sheared off piece of plastic jammed in the threads, and you think, oh no, how do I get that out? If you take a flathead screwdriver and you jam it in there so it kind of like stabs into the broken piece, like really secure, like jam it in there, maybe tap it with a hammer, bump, bump, so it's wedged, and then you slowly untwist and you can unscrew that piece of plastic out of there to put the new fitting in. Back in the day, my shipments, sometimes this fitting would get broken off of one of, like the main system or off of this, usually the main system. And so I've included the extra elbow ever since so that no one had to wait. Because I just did not like, I didn't want someone to order something from me and they waited all that time, they finally get it, and they opened the box, and UPS or FedEx broke off a tip, broke off a fitting, and I didn't like that. I said, that's not good for business. It's not good for them. It makes them upset. I want them to be happy. So I started including the fitting, and that way, if ever they broke a fitting, they had it in their bag of goodies, and they could just put it together. And so, occasionally, I even put in the instructions, oh no, a fitting was broken during shipping, and I explained how to fix it. And then others would say, hey, I broke one, I dropped it, and it broke off. And I said, no problem, it's in your bag. And they're like, oh, thank God, that's great, that's cool, I can just fix this now? I said, yes, you don't have to wait for anything, it's all there. Okay, so I'm going to screw on the metal bracket that goes on top, this bracket right here. And again, I'm making sure that I put it correctly. If I see how it says in, out, it's actually, you can see it for once. If I did this wrong, it would be like that, it would be in, out, it would be the wrong direction, it wouldn't work correctly. So I want to make sure that I've got this the correct way when I'm building it. And if you take it apart to this point and you have to rebuild, make sure you've got the in going in and then coming out the other side of the DI correctly on your bracket. So 4 more screws. And because I know you don't need to hear the sound of a drill, I'll put this on mute. Now we're just going to put the DI housing on there. I'm going to hand tighten it because that's all it needs. I'm going to put my blue tubing on the out because that is the tubing coming out. And then the customer would put a little valve on the end, and that would stop water from coming out of the tubing. Then I put my 2 little blue clips. And then I always wrap it up so that way the tubing won't be kinked or damaged before the customer ever sees it. And I use a little zip tie to hold it on. And there is the DI stage. All right. If you don't have one of these fancy TDS meters, I do sell them. They're not cheap. This one's $60, but it's the size of a thermostat. It's very easy to read, which is what I really love about it. And it uses a AA battery, so it's got a bracket on the back. You can glue this to the wall or glue it to the bracket of your RO system. Here is the mount. Slides right on. If you take out these 4 screws, you can take the back off to replace the battery and just make it work immediately, which is great. And the battery lasts super long time. I think that's kind of it for this video. I'm looking at the clock, and I'm thinking, let me answer a couple of questions and then get on the road because, in theory, she will be here in about 45 minutes. Let me see this really quick. Let me fix that. Fix it. My forehead's getting chopped off. Okay, let me see. Alex says, what exactly does DI resin remove? Could using RO water without DI resin be good enough? Depends where you live. Depends what's coming out of the RO. If it's coming out close to 0, you probably could. You could probably be fine. I'm going to move this closer, sorry. The DI resin polishes the last of the TDS away. The membrane did all the work. Matter of fact, the membranes that I sell, I have 2 kinds. The 100-gallon-a-day membrane has a 98% rejection rate. That's super important, and that's what I use on my system. So that system right there, it looks like the 150-gallon-a-day system, but I put a 100-gallon-a-day membrane in there because of the better rejection rate. So for every 100 TDS, the membrane takes it down to 2. If I use the 93% rejection rate for the faster water to make more water more quickly, that means for every 100 TDS, I'd have 7 TDS left over. And let's say your source water is 200, it would come out at 14. And 14 TDS going into my DI would wear out the DI more quickly than when the water's coming out at 2 or 3. That nice low number going into my DI makes the DI resin last a long time, and that's why I bleed off that first 90 seconds so I don't even get that burst of 100 to 150 to 200, that 1 minute's worth. I don't even want that 1 minute going into my DI. Oh, I do want to mention this. If you are installing a new membrane on your system, it's very, very important that you turn it on for 1 hour and let water flow through it for a solid hour and throw that away. Because the membrane comes with a food-grade preservative inside. I can't even say it. Food-grade preservative. And that needs to be flushed out. That does not go to your pets. It doesn't go to your aquarium. It doesn't go into the DI. So, when you put that new membrane in, if you have everything all plumbed together with DI, open the DI housing and take the DI out and put the housing back on and turn on the system and let it run for an hour. That usually equates to 5 gallons of water. Your bucket's full to the top. It's safe to use. Now you can go ahead and turn the system off, install the DI back into the system, and start making RODI water. If you don't flush that out first, there's a risk to your livestock, there's risk to your health, so you don't want to do that. And also, I don't want to send that water through brand new DI. I don't want to waste DI on anything. To me, DI resin is like gold, and I hoard every ounce of it. So I like that I can have a DI resin last me between 5 and 13 months, depending on what's going on in the city. I mean, there's times where it just doesn't get depleted. The whole thing might turn orange, but as long as the meter keeps telling me 0, I'm fine. I can look at an orange filter for months, but if every time I turn on it says 0 coming out, I'm going to keep using it. And that DI resin could actually turn orange on the outside surface while the core might still be dark inside. DI resin can be recharged, but usually when you recharge it, the chemical method of doing that to reuse it over and over, it strips away the color changing. So now you just have DI resin that doesn't change color, and you have 0 visual indication, and you live exclusively off of TDS readings. All right, let's see. Jordan says, I'm kind of surprised I haven't seen a beautiful RODI setup like what most folks would call wife-friendly. There are some on the market that look super pretty. I saw some at Interzoo last May that were in these specific, it almost looked like a PC case. You couldn't see anything with some tube, going in and out. And it was very, very, kind of looked like, like I said, you're putting a computer under your desk or something. I find that those type of devices, all you're doing is putting a clamshell around all of what you just saw. But getting to it, you got to peel that all off to work on it. So, I don't know. But if it's tucked under the sink or if you've got it inside a cabinet, it's wife-friendly. Steve says, I finally caught one of your live streams live. It's because I started early. I'm actually getting close to having to wrap up here. Let's see. Steve says, I wanted to thank you on your tips for algae removal on low iron glass. I just set up a new Red Sea Max Nano G2XXL, which is 53 gallons, and upgraded to the algae-free scraper and the Flipper credit card scraper. That's great. Okay, let's see. Nick says, my first DI stage, see, he has more than one. There we go. Only changes color halfway up, and then the second stage will change color all the way. I've tried different containers and checked pressure. Has anyone had a similar issue? It's all how the water is moving through the resin, and it could be channeling, which means it started through a brick, and then it found some hollow spots, and it's just continued to go out because the water has to pass through the DI to get out. When you install a brand new system and you turn it on, you watch all the housings fill up with water, including this one, and it's full, and it turns dark, like I said, almost black. And then you turn on this, you open the valve to make water, and you just watch the water level in the DI just drop down. That's completely normal. It does happen, but usually after running it for about 14 days, it just stays full the entire time you're running and making water. If you're in those first 14 days and you're running it and it's down low, don't worry, because the water had to go down the outside of this cartridge and then goes up through the center and goes through the resin to come out to exit out through this tubing. That is completely normal, and then like I said, later on it'll tend to stay full the entire time unless you're doing a super long run where you're running the RO system for like a couple of days in a row, and at that point sometimes I will see the water drop in here, but it doesn't matter because it's still going through. Now, why you're seeing it in only partial use in one and then more use in the other, I actually don't even recommend running double DIs. I find that to be unnecessary whatsoever for the hobbyist. It makes sense to have 2 of them for a person that is not going to be around their aquarium and needs to travel a lot or sees their tank once every couple of weeks. And those people, they want to make sure they're getting RO water that's zero. It's sort of like I run the Trident on my computer, on my aquarium to measure alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium. And if I could somehow have extra bottles connected so it wouldn't run out during a trip, I might do something like that. But when I'm here and the bottle runs out, I get a notification. I go over there, I get a new bottle, I put it in the Trident, I tell it I've put a new bottle in, and everything's fine, and I go on my trip. I mean, I go about my day. But if I'm about to leave town, I might change the reagents early. Or if I was traveling for a couple of weeks for vacation, you might swap out your DI early so that way you have good water the entire time you're gone. But it takes 90 seconds to swap out a DI cartridge. You just turn off the water to the system, you open a valve to relieve the pressure, you use the filter wrench to open it, which that's why there's 4 holes on the top here to bolt it to the wall. It's very important that that's screwed into something solid like a stud or a wooden plank, so that way it's screwed into wood, because when you're trying to loosen that housing after it's been running for several months, it's going to be pretty hard to loosen. And in your situation, you're seeing the different color changes. The first one doesn't seem to use up, but the other one goes longer. Gets used up more quickly. That's just an artifact. It doesn't really matter as long as you're getting 0 TDS. But do you need 2 in a row? I would say no. I would just use 1 and let it run until it's dead, and I'd put a new one in and just be done. Some people do have separate cation and anion instead of a mixed bed resin like I sell. And so the first one would be cation and the second one is anion, or vice versa. I don't think it matters. And one will get used up more than the other. I know that. And you might end up changing anion many, many times while the cation seems to last forever. But I've never run a separate system. I've always run a mixed bed, and it just does what I need. And my life is simple, and I don't have to have a lot of stuff in my in my utility room. I just have this. It's simple. And by the way, this system right here does more than just make water for my aquarium. It also sends water to my kitchen sink so I can make a nice pot of coffee with RO water. It also goes to my ice maker of my refrigerator, so I have nice RO ice cubes. So that's that. Okay, let's see if there's another question here. Baker's Reef says, buy from Mark and support the small business, not the big guys who care about profit. Hey, I need a little profit too, to be honest. Baker's Reef asks, do you offer DI resin equal to the Spectra Pure Silica Buster? No, I've never sold the Silica Buster. I even reached out to my supplier and said, is there any way we can get this? Because occasionally people want it. And it just seemed like it wasn't going to happen. So I just tell people, if you need that one, get it from someone else. But I carry all the rest of the stuff, the standard stuff. Let's see, what else we got here? Vroomy says, it'd be interesting how many systems run with just tap water. I think these are one of the most important pieces of equipment for your aquarium. I completely agree. Tap water is doable, especially if you're using dechlorinator. But whatever's come out of the city pipes, anything will end up in your aquarium. Using an RODI filter, you are protecting your investment, your livestock. It's really critical that it's like that. Oh, wow. Keith says, I finally got my control board that I won from it. Man, that was like a year ago. Was it just stuck in shipping forever? That's crazy. Andreas says, I like the drill sound. Well, I was just concerned it might be really loud on microphone. And since I can't hear what you're hearing because I am just talking into a microphone, I just keep hoping I'm doing it correctly over here. This one I just answered about thoughts of single versus mixed bed. And by the way, I also should say that I only sell the cartridge. I don't sell loose resin. Some people do. I don't. I know it's cheaper that way for you. I get it. I also need to make money. So I sell a cartridge. But the beauty of the cartridge is you don't have to do anything. It's just ready to go. You just make sure the bottom of that thing was, snug tight before you put it into the acrylic housing, because sometimes they're a little bit loose. If you are putting DI resin into the housing, the cartridge, you're going to turn it upside down. You're going to put in your resin. You're going to pack it down. You're going to drop it on the table, tunk, 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 a few times to make it like really pack, and then you add more because you want it to be completely full. It's got to be full, okay? And if you spill it on the floor, it's like walking on ball bearings, and it's very slippery, so be careful. Santana Reef says, have you thought about doing the early years of Coral Magazine topics because of changes in technology or updates to topics or science or whatever? No, but now I am. Thank you for the suggestion. Hillbilly Reefer says, are you ever going to prune that reef? It's coming. It's coming. It's desperately needed right now. Gavin says, any or thoughts on CO2 affecting how fast the anion resin depletes? Okay, yes. How are we doing on time? We are running late. The CO2 in well water will destroy DI resin rapidly. So in that situation, you would take your RO system, you have it fill a barrel, a trash can, something big, with RO water. And then you would use a PVC pipe that's tall, a long pipe, stand it in the barrel of water, and snake a piece of airline tubing down the bottom with an air stone, preferably a weighted ceramic air stone so it's heavy and stays at the bottom of the PVC pipe. So again, picture in your mind, big barrel, 50 gallons or a 33-gallon trash can filled with RO water with a PVC pipe just angled into the barrel with an air stone going down the pipe, and you plug it into an air pump and you just let it oxygenate the water through that pipe. And then I guess you would then grab water from, I think that's it. I think it just has to be in the pipe. Then that oxygen going into the RO water will force out the CO2 in the water, and then you'll pump that water, which I think they took the tube that's going to the pump and they put it down the same PVC pipe. I've never really thought about that till just now. But you want to grab that oxygenated water and you send it with a pump into the DI housing, and then it goes to the DI resin, and your DI lasts longer. So it's a trick, it's a hack, but it's a great solution. So, and then you would, from the DI, it goes into a second trash can, and now you have DI water. So it's RO water in a barrel, oxygenated, pumped through the, with some kind of a pump, like a permeate pump, into the DI resin, and then into your other barrel. Keep them both, keep the DI covered. Don't cover the other one. You need to get rid of the CO2. Hope that helps. Adam says, I run dual membranes because it cuts down on the wastewater a ton and improves efficiency notably as well. You need to run high pressure though. If you can get your water at 80 to 100 psi, you can definitely run 2 membranes, and you can run the second membrane off the waistline of the first membrane. So like you said, you're using less, you're consuming and utilizing the wastewater coming out after that flow restrictor. But that's a whole other project, and I don't have time to get into it. But you're right. What pressure would you recommend looking at for a booster pump? Basically, a booster pump doesn't let you dial into a certain speed. They're set and forget. You just plug them in, and they just do their job. But normally, it will add 40 psi to your system. So if your system without a booster pump is running at 30, then with a booster pump, it should take you to 70. And if you're ever wondering if your booster pump is doing its job and you have a PSI gauge on your RODI system, you can go ahead and turn it on, let it run, and then you can just unplug the booster pump and just watch the needle jump, and you can see, okay, I'm getting an extra 20, or I'm getting an extra 30, or I'm getting an extra 40 PSI. Thomas says, my aunt uses spring water for her saltwater tank. Is that safe? It's a little bit better than tap water. Jake says, my RO tank unfortunately is outside. It gets very little sunlight, but but will I have algae issues down the line? You might be able to wrap this. I think you're talking about a poly tank. You might be able to wrap it or shade it or cover it, with, I don't know, a tarp or a blanket or something, and kind of keep the sunlight off of it. And then the last question, Thomas says, are you going on a trip? No, I just came back from a trip. My next trip will be early March, and I'll be going to Reef Stock in Denver. All right, guys, I have to go. I got to use the restroom, run to the airport, and get my best friend. I got to go. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in today, and I wish you the best. Oh, finally, don't forget, you got to test your water this week. It's Water Test Saturday. Bye, guys.